Welcome back to Funky Politics, the hardest hitting political show on the planet. That's right, folks. We are the hardest hitting show on the planet. I mean, the hardest hitting political show on the planet. Hell, we might be the hardest hitting show, period. I don't know. That could be the bullet talking right now. I had to get me something to kind of snack on this morning. I've been sitting here thinking, we had a hell of a weekend, had to run to Nashville, take the kid back to school, of course, at Tennessee State. So they got this whole shelter in place piece for 14 days for all returning students. I'm thinking about children who are just starting back elementary school and starting back to middle school on today down here, mostly in the South, Tennessee and Mississippi. So one thing I will encourage all of our parents to do, make sure that you do your part in terms of the child has got to go back to school because the districts have opened, if the universities and colleges have opened. Make sure you do your part and stay in extremely strong communication with your child and also with the office right there, right? So that's just how it's got to be. Know what their protocols are. I can't say enough how much I've talked to my daughter, who's 21 at the time, who's 21 now, but I've talked about, well, what are the university protocols in case you do get sick? What do I need to do? What does your mom need to do? Where do we go to? Who do we talk to? So knowing those protocols will help allay some of those fears, we hope, of parents who are sitting at work right now and their babies just went back to school for the first time since March. We're not talking about since the summer's been over now. No, we're talking about since March. Kids have been out of school since mid-March, but that's one thing. Another thing is, I can't get over the fact this president that we have, 45, President Donald John Trump, has single-handedly uprooted what we consider to be common sense across the spectrum. I'm not going to talk about his followers, and I don't even call them supporters. I call them followers, because what you have people around the country who, if he sneezes, they cough. That's not how. If he itches, they scratch. Let's get away from that. This guy he's an anomaly in and of itself. But I will say this to you: he will have to be removed from office through the ballot box. Let's just concentrate on what we need to do, and let's get another team elected here November 3rd. Because if not, we will be doing some hard time. A lot of us gonna be doing some hard time, and I ain't talking about in prison, Lord. We're gonna be doing some hard time on these streets because this country, the way it's being run right now, it does not benefit the little guy. We need the little guy to have some wins. And I think right now, those wins are few and far between. So let's look at trying to do something different. I need you guys to register. I need you to get activated. I need you to mobilize, but I need you to vote. Most early voting for around the country for the November race will be 2 weeks prior to November 3rd. So if you're going to use the absentee ballot, some states have allowed that COVID-19 is one of those reasons you can't. Tennessee will not allow you to use COVID-19 as a reason, or especially if you don't have the virus or your loved one doesn't have it, but you're just in fear of it. They won't let you use that as a reason not to vote in person. So check this out. If you're 60 years of age, anywhere in this country, request an absentee ballot and submit it. And I would submit it as soon as I got my hot little hands on it. I wouldn't pray over it. I wouldn't do a seance. I wouldn't put no dust on it. Fill it out, get it in, because the post office might take 2 weeks. So these folks right now taking out machines and everything else. But anyway, enough about that. Look, we have got a young brother coming into the studio today, Trey Robertson, who comes from a strong family. Dad is related to a chief in Ghana. I mean, this is going to be an interesting story here. I want to talk about that. So the brother comes from some royalty, number one. I know Howard, but I don't know if I would have called him royalty. But he all right with me, a good noob. He's a good noob. And his mother, of course, is a lovely woman, Beverly Robertson, who is the Chamber of Commerce president and CEO in Memphis, Tennessee. But he in his own right is running things in D.C. We're going to have him come in and talk about this millennial piece, how they can be activated in this 2020 election and how they can get ready to step up and lead this country, because at this point, it's time for these young folks to do something. So give me just a moment. We'll bring right to you Trey Robertson right here in the Funky Politics studio. See you in just a second.
Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, one and all, to the little show that we like to call Black Nerd Power, BNP if you're nasty. I'm your host, Mr. Richard Douglas Jones, and with me, the co-hosts of Black Nerd Power, Mr. Marcus Seabury.
What's up, my nerd?
All nerd, please. And Ms. Kimber. What's happening, man?
Hi.
All right, first, here is the rage figure.
I love his helmet.
talking about escapism and like, yo, I'm mad, but I'm tired. Like, is it okay that like if instead of going out to protest tonight, I want to sit and watch a movie? And I'm just like, hell yeah, it's fine.
A quote unquote woke romance that features a character that's not being like objectified for her body, that does not necessarily mean that that book will not have sex in it.
And I think on that note, we're going to end the show.
Katsukian. Download the Katsukian app, available on Android and iOS.
As promised is promised. I've got Miss Robertson's son in the studio today. Got Trey. What's up, brother? How you doing, man?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the invite. It's an honor to be here.
Hey, man, let me tell you something. It's an honor to have you here. I'm lighthearted about it, but I want to make sure that folks out there, that you all know who I'm talking about. Howard Robertson and Beverly Robertson, they've owned their own PR agency for, nearly 40 years, I believe it is. They stepped out of Memphis when it wasn't no stepping out, right? And so they've got these three offspring who they have raised up to be some pretty fine Americans, man. I want to make sure that you know that most of us in this city, a lot of us think that the world of your mom and your dad, man. Bottom line to it, all right?
Thank you.
So
that means so much.
You got to be all right. At least you 50% all right. I don't know about the other 50, but you all right. That's on your mama's side, not your dad's side. Hey, man, I want to talk right now. I'm glad you're here on Funky Pop. I want to talk about those parental influences. You know, growing up in the household, man, it had to be pretty tough. I mean, you got some successful people you're looking at. I mean, so how did that lay the groundwork for you as you said, hey, look, what do I want to do? I just can't sit out there and smoke weed and sit on the street all day. My mother, my dad expect something of me. How'd it work with you? Not as though smoking weed, stay on the street is what it is bad. But go ahead.
Again, thank you for having me on the show. Wow, good question. It's really interesting. Shout out to my mom and dad who have really shown more so by example. Which I think is more important than anything, how to be a good person, how to, what it means to advocate and to contribute positivity and greatness to your city. They are two of the most impressingly faithful Memphians, right?
Sure. Yes,
who they love the city, they love the people, they love what it stands for, the culture, all of that. And most importantly, I think they have always taught us by their example rather than tell us what to do or what to be. And I think that's important because and I feel confident in speaking for myself and my siblings that there was never any sort of unreasonable amount of pressure to be this or be that, but to always sort of kind of honor yourself and know what it is that you do well and shine sort of in that lane. And recently my mom got the top 100 women of the century, right? By USA Today.
I'm like, whoa,
it's so impressive.
Major moves. Major moves.
Yeah. And she's so humbled about it all. And I think that, both she and my dad are very accomplished in this community and have, accomplished so much. But more importantly than being accomplished, one thing that they have done is they have remained selfless, and they have realized the importance of building others and, sort of discovering greatness in others rather than just relish in accomplishments.
So
right?
They're givers.
That's right. That's right.
I know they're givers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can earn so many accolades and so many accomplishments, and all of that is wonderful, right? For what it is that you do. But if it doesn't equate to service to your community and helping to uplift others, then what's the point, right? And I think that they have centered everything that they are in Memphis and nationwide. All of their accomplishments are not necessarily centered in self, but in being selfless. And that's important.
Well, knowing the story of your dad, and your dad has shared the story of how they met, #1 some number of years ago. But also, I got to make sure I shout out the Beltline, because folks out there, she claimed Orange Mound, but she really from the Beltline. She was
It's a difference.
Yeah, she grew up in a house. Her mom and dad had a house. So Bear Robinson come out the Beltline, but your folks, man, and your dad. I want to get on this. I think it was called the Zima clan in Ghana. So he traced all of this back to Ghana. And I understand you didn't go on the trip with him, but Ryan did. Your brother Ryan did. And so, man, how does that help channel your thoughts in terms of where I gotta go, man? I come from royalty, man.
Wow.
I come from a chief.
Wow.
Right. I'm coming from leadership, right? And so, but you've seen it all your life now. So how do you do that now, even in the present form of what you do now in DC?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point that you just made. I've heard and seen pictures of all of the the ceremonial procedures and
they call your dad Nana or something. I'm like, man, I'm not gonna fall down to worship, man. I don't care. He come to the studio, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. And it's wonderful. I mean, I've been to Africa. It's a rich continent of 54 countries, of complete and of thousands of tribes and dialects, and it's just an amazing continent. But to be totally honest, it didn't take a trip to Ghana. I mean, to Ghana to realize.
I know you were you were a royal priesthood. See, when you've been growing up, and I know your folk over College Chapel, when you've been growing up, right, and you kind of know. I know you seeing me up there. You see me?
No,
Lord have mercy.
Sorry,
I'm gonna talk to your mom and dad about that.
No, I'm not seeing me, but I do go to church.
I'm gonna talk to Bishop up there about you. Trey, here in Memphis, that Ghana lineage, but we still are a part of a molecular body, right? We're still a part of the entire body of believers, but COVID-19 has, man, really thrown a wrench into the life of a lot of our people. And I know, especially international travel has been kind of shut down, or even going to your local grocery store, but you're right in the DC area, man. So what is it like for you in Washington, DC, in that DMV area, man, now that COVID has really just kind of grabbed you by the collar and say, look, I'm in control. Muriel Bowser, the mayor, who's a great woman, is not in control. I'm in control. The president, who sits at 1600, he's not in control. How do you migrate through all of that?
Interesting question. So professionally, I work at the United States Copyright Office. Is that
under Commerce? Is that under Commerce?
That is not under the Department of Commerce. That's the Patent and Trademark Office. That's under the Department of Commerce. We are under the Library of Congress and under the executive branch. So we're directly on Capitol Hill.
You work for Lonnie then? Hey, I know Lonnie Barge, but
actually, I work with Dr. Carla Hyden, who is the librarian of Congress, first Black librarian of Congress. But yeah, so we're located like directly across the street from the U.S. Capitol building in the same complex as the United States Supreme Court, it is the center of power and the center of government in this country. And so whether it is announced or not, a lot of people that are a lot of residents in the United States look to DC for direction, right? And not just limited to federal issues, but how do people in the DMV sort of navigate this whole terrain surrounding, the COVID epidemic. And, it's really interesting because as the regulations sort of came out, and as people were sort of given the mask mandates and saying that these are the rules, and outlining sort of ways to combat it, largely the residents of the DMV, for those of you who don't know, DC, Maryland, Virginia, were largely compliant, right? Like, this is what we have to do, this is how we got to get through this. And so I think that in the outside world, most of the citizens were very compliant, but professionally, working at the Copyright Office, we receive, and essentially what that is that, we receive copyright registrations from all over the world. It's Yeah, so we register, the area that I work in registers sound recordings, musical compositions, motion pictures, poetry, choreography, from different types of creators, content creators, the world over. Overwhelmingly, our content or the materials that we receive are from U.S. citizens. So those materials and those applications are largely submitted electronically, right? And by that I mean sort of a format that's similar to online banking,
Sure.
right? Where you can log into your account and sort of like, upload documents if you have to upload documents, and click send, and we receive. Yes,
So
we
are you
receive
saying to
all that
me that if I
electronically.
want to tr- copyright, do I copyright or do I trademark? I want my DC, my name. Well, not like Washington DC, but just DC. I would submit to your office.
I think that is more so a patent and trademark issue. If
Which is in
you,
the other,
yeah,
which is in commerce. Okay.
so if you wrote a script,
oh, I see,
and you wanted to get that script copyrighted, then you would send it to my office. Or if you and I wrote a song together,
Sure.
right? We would send in an application and upload a file of that song, and somebody on my team would get that song and sort of compare it to the application facts or the public
Sure.
record, and issue a copyright registration for that particular composition.
So then, does your staff or do you have to go and listen for another song out there
Good
that's similar
question.
to this particular song?
I get this question all the time on panels. Yes and no, right? There's a certain set of facts that you sort of have to comply with and agree with once you submit an application. One of them is originality, right? And that's not to say that you can't register a composition that includes pre-existing or previously created material, right? We get that all the time in the form of samples, in the
So
form
like
of
a hook or something.
yeah. So yeah, exactly. If
Gotcha.
it came from a pre-existing
Sure.
song, you can still register your material, but on the application you would have to exclude the material that's already created by somebody else, because obviously that material is already under copyright protection, right? With someone else claiming ownership. So you would send in your original content and then exclude that pre-existing content to us. So that's how that sort of works.
But I've copyrighted my song, but I can still play it down the road with that hook in there, though, right?
Sure.
Wow.
Because the facts on the record are that whatever you used from someone else is listed and already stated.
In other words, I didn't take credit for his, right?
Absolutely.
Man, well, I tell you, man, how y'all get a job? Okay, so I know a lot of folks that sing a lot of songs. None of them original, by the way. But
Okay.
But no. So this particular work, how did you find yourself in this space, though? Is there a degree, or is there a level of training that a person has to have to get inside the copyright division in Library of Congress?
Good question. We mainly, my background personally, I have undergraduate. Let me rewind all the way. A graduate of Overton Performing Arts High School in Memphis, right? A school that has produced so many stars, dancers.
And what was that young lady's name that was the leading things over there in terms of creative arts? The Miss what's her name? The teacher over there.
You talking about my teacher, the late great Dr. Lula Hedgeman?
Lord have mercy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. She lives forever.
That's right. Dr. Hedgeman, Doc.
What a legacy. And her legacy, right, is tied to very successful careers of so many different
Memphis
singers.
City Schools.
Memphis City Schools. Absolutely.
Shout out to Memphis City Schools.
Shout out, big shout.
Shout them out. Yeah.
Big shout. But so many people have matriculated from that high school. Artists, dancers, musicians, actors, you name it. Yeah, it runs the gamut. But graduate of Overton Performing Arts High School, earned a Bachelor of Music degree from Middle Tennessee State University, and a Master of Music degree from the Frost School of Music at the University of Miami. So my background is...
Hold on, man, stop. Miami.
Yeah.
Lord. Go ahead with your story.
I started to wear my youth cap.
Whoa.
But anyway, most of the people who work at the Copyright Office in the area where I work are people that are creators, right? They're
Gotcha.
either musicians, authors, painters, sculptors,
But not
movie
necessarily
directors.
But not necessarily lawyers or anything like that.
Oh, absolutely, lawyers,
Okay.
attorneys, professors. I mean, you name
get
it.
all.
Yeah. It's
Librarians?
librarians,
Yeah.
absolutely, because we do have a library to maintain and a massive. If you know anything about the Library of Congress, it's the world's largest library and cultural institution. So you can imagine the size of that library's collections. We do need people who know how to maintain electronic and physical copy collections. So it's an awesome place to work. It's a very prestigious institution, atop Capitol Hill. But there are so many. I work on my team alone. They're professors, they're professional musicians, documentary creators. I have super talented fellow on my team who was a musician for one of the past American Idol award winners. So it's so many different creative types who work at the Copyright Office and are able to sort of analyze these works that come in, these works of authorship, and determine whether or not that they can be registered under U.S. copyright law.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you are so much deeper than just that office. And I want to make sure we get on record because being a millennial yourself, I mean, you're out there, you're in the community, you come from a community of struggle, right?
Yes.
And you're living in a community that's still struggling. And I want to talk about Black Lives Matter and how in your lifetime and what you've seen in the DC or the DMV area now, when do we get to as a nation to actually come to grips with the fact that police brutality is real to Black folk and that it's not something that we've made up in our minds, but now because of an iPhone or a Galaxy, it's in your face. When do we get to that point? Trey?
Oh, that's a loaded
I didn't mean to do that.
No,
to you, but,
no.
Basically, man, we're not living in a vacuum, y'all. This is real to us.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And you get the same thing. They don't see manager of copyrights registration policy from the Library of Congress when they pull you over, if you get pulled over, right?
That's true.
They don't see that.
That's true.
Let's call it what it is.
You know what? It's funny. But let me start in the first point that you said. I sort of consider myself an exennial because I'm a young Xer, old millennial. So in that
but
sort
you
of 5 years.
Okay.
I received that. I don't
know what they call me. Octogenarian.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, I claim both of them because I think that both characteristics are present. But in terms of what's going on in the country currently with regards to Black Lives Matter, this sort of racial reckoning that is currently occurring. It's a very pivotal time, I think, in our history. And you touched on Black Lives Matter. DC was sort of like the city that sort of kind of led the charge in terms of painting the streets and making a public declaration for Black lives in the wake of the killing of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, whose killers still remain at large, as we know. And I think that it is an important time to hold people accountable for making structural and policy changes, right? And so what I would sort of advise and encourage us all to do is to not be so caught up in symbolism, but to be more focused on holding politicians accountable for making policy changes, because we can knock down all kind of Confederate statues. We can make companies create so many opportunities for people of color on their board.
Yeah.
But if it does not result in solid, substantial, and tangible policy changes, then what we'll see happening with what we have seen happen with those killings will continue happening, right? In spite of all of this other stuff.
Well, that's an interesting point you just made. You're talking about the structural change within the political climate. And I think I need to throw this out there for people because the structural change, you go to Mississippi, you got 2 Republican senators down there. You got only 1 Democrat congressman down there who's a Democrat, and that's Benny Thompson, who represents the Delta, which is one of the poorest areas in the country, right? And then in Tennessee, you got 2 Republican senators, and you got 2 Democratic senators, Cooper out of Nashville and Cohen out of Memphis. But I want people to understand, until you flip these state legislatures, and I don't want to seem coy that the Congress doesn't matter, because it does matter. But the state legislatures matter, right?
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, because Troy, they've got to matter, because what happens on your day-to-day life in terms of tickets, speeding tickets, taxes here locally in Tennessee affects you from a state standpoint.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, but anyway, that's just my 2 cents out of it. But I want to make sure that our millennials know that we here on on Funky Politics, we're for Black Lives Matter. I tell people all the time, it still matters. It matters today. It's going to matter tomorrow. It's going to matter yesteryear. And we've got to push our young people. And that's one of the good things about it, pushing our folks to make sure that they step up and they vote. Man, they got to register, man. They got to register. And one of those things about, I want to get to you about real quick before we get out of here, is DC. DC is a social hotspot, man. I mean, we look forward to going to CBC every year, right? Man, y'all done cancel CBC. Lord, I said, Lord, what's I going to do? What is I going to do now? I mean, I go there for a week to get all the policy learning I can. And then in the evening hours, I just go get me 1 or 2 light drinks. And I go back to the room and I study some more for my next class, if I can make it, Lord help me. What happens in DC now that the CBC does not return with all of that Black thought? Because those Black thought leaders from around the world converge on one city. At one time, I don't know any other time in the world or in any other city that this happens other than the Congressional Black Caucus.
Yeah. Well, I think that the CBC has to do what everybody else has been forced to do, right? In times of crisis, you sort of have an opportunity to innovate and sort of like, still, create some form of a transformative change, because, it absolutely is not an option to just stop because, there's a pandemic. Some things have to continue. The work must continue. So, what we're seeing is a lot of companies, a lot of government agencies, for that matter, since you talked about DC, and as well as, Congress and the House of Representatives, we still have to be about the business, and the CBC with, in terms of community uplift and advocacy for our group, our specific group. The work must continue. So you may not be able to physically, click somebody else's glass, in a toast, but one pandemic doesn't stop a show. The work must continue because we don't really have an option to stop.
I heard that somewhere, but I thought it was a monkey. But now you're right. Now they said one monkey don't stop a show, but 2 might put a whole big throw a wrench in it. One thing before you get out of here, man, I got to get you on record. Okay. Joe Biden chose Senator Kamala Harris of California, junior senator out of California, to be his running mate, his VP. What do you think about that choice?
I think that Senator Harris is the choice that Biden made for, his running mate. And, I think that we all should be, not we all, we are no stranger to what has happened over the last 4 years. Sure. And everybody recognizes what has been done and what has not been done under the presidency of 45, and what needs to be done to evict him from the White House in this upcoming election. So understanding that that is a priority, it is also important to note that Vice President Biden and Senator Harris have careers in politics, right? And with careers, lifelong careers. Joe Biden 40 years, Senator Harris a little bit less than that, but there are records, right?
That's right.
That's right. There are voting records. There are policies that they were both responsible for. While we are clear that the main goal and the main objective is to elect a new president to be number 46, we also must hold our politicians that we select in the upcoming election accountable. So it's not enough to limit your politics. Now, if you're in our group, you know what I mean?
Right.
Our group, it's not enough to limit your politics to just getting 45 out of office.
Yeah.
You must take it a step further, right? And hold new elected officials accountable for making those policy and those changes that need to be made that are targeting our community, right? So be smart with your vote.
Yeah.
But at the same time, don't think that you've accomplished your goal just because they've been elected.
And you've evicted out.
Yes.
Yeah.
They have
That's not the end game.
They have records. Research those. Always research your politics. I fundamentally believe that politics is an exchange. For my vote, what am I getting?
Yeah.
What am I making sure that I'm creating? What type of world am I creating for my children, if you have children, or if you have nieces, nephews, whatever?
Yeah.
What kind of world am I creating, right? And doing that, you are holding politicians accountable. You don't just give away your vote. Your vote is very powerful, right? So make sure your vote stands for something, not just getting 45 out of. Everybody's clear on that.
Yeah.
Gotta go. But take it a step further and make sure that you're holding politicians
that
accountable.
those people who have the powers to be know that I'm going to do this.
Yes,
but I'm doing this with reservation.
It's an exchange.
Because if you don't do this, then we'll be looking 4 more years to replace you.
Absolutely. Because under a Biden and Harris presidency, Black folks can still be getting killed by the hands of police.
Okay, that's the end of Funky Politics here, folks. This show has been one for the ages. I'm going to stop him while he's ahead here. Because, he does work for the executive branch. You know who's in charge.
Listen,
I already know where you stand.
This is calculated.
Yeah, I already know you stand.
This is very calculated.
Hey,
Don't think I didn't think about that. Yes, we know.
Trey, thank you so much, brother, for coming by Funky Politics,
Hey.
man. Like I said again, man, your folks are our folks, and we belong to them. They belong to us, and like you keep doing the work, man. Keep putting the work in up there in DC, in the area up there. We're gonna keep doing what we got to do down here in Tennessee to make things happen. And hopefully, come January, we'll see you in DC in January. There'll be some parties going on. It might not be CBC, but it's gonna be a time. What a time, right? Hey, look, we'll be right back with some closing thoughts here on Funky Politics.
Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, one and all, to the little show that we like to call Black Nerd Power, BNP if you're nasty. I'm your host, Mr. Richard Douglas Jones, and with me, the co-hosts of Black Nerd Power, Mr. Marcus Seabury.
What's up, my nerd?
Oh, nerd, please. And Ms. Kimber. What's happening, man?
Hi.
All right, first, here is the Rage figure.
I love his helmet.
Talking about escapism and like, yo, I'm mad, but I'm tired. Like, is it okay that, like, if instead of going out to protest tonight, I want to sit and watch a movie? I'm just like, hell yeah, it's fine.
A quote-unquote woke romance that features a character that's not being, like, objectified for her body, that does not necessarily mean that book will not have sex in it.
And I think on that note, we're going to end the show.
Kazukian. Download the Kazukian app, available on Android and iOS.
That's right. Look, let me tell you something. Trey Robertson, he's all what I told you he was going to be. I'm going to get him back on the show again. I know we didn't get through not half of what I need to talk to this young brother about, but let me tell you, I hope it helped you. I hope it gave you a little bit more insight, number one, into the copyright office. Those of you who have a passion for anything, you have a passion for it. You've written it down. You've sang it long enough. It's yours. You heard what he said, even if it has a hook in it. You want to copyright what you did. Poetry, What my Lieutenant Colonel Sears, I know you listening. Hey, look, man, send it into the office here, get it registered so you can get credit for that, and that's yours, right? That's how we do things, decent and in order. Well, I'll tell you what. Speaking of that, and speaking of, as I always like to close our program out with the fact that COVID-19 is still strong, it's still living, but it will not kill us. We will live. You will survive. Do what you got to do. Social distance. Wear your mask. Wash your damn hands. And come this time next year, we'll be blessing COVID's ass on up out of here. But anyway, I'm DC, and I'm out of here. Have a great day.